crafty people. Welcome to the 4th episode of the Handmade with Heart podcast. Today, I'm interviewing my friend Sam of Keystreet Creations. We talk about taxes, craft show must-haves, and using unexpected items in our craft show display. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Handmade with Heart podcast. I'm your host, Dana, and I own the small business Scrappy Stitch. Have you ever wanted to know more about some of your favorite small businesses? Follow along as I interview other creative small business owners. We'll talk about getting started, what an average day for a creator is like, tips and tricks, and of course, everything is handmade with heart. Hey, Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Dana. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us how you got started?
Sure. So my name is Sam, and I am the owner of Keystreet Creations. I've been just a creator, I guess, kind of my whole life. I've always really enjoyed crafting and building things. When I was little, I used to take apart toys and stuff and try to figure out how they worked and put them back together. And I was always trying to figure things out. And so, like I said, I've been creating and crafting kind of my whole life. And at my previous school, I'm a teacher by day. And so at my previous school, they have a holiday bazaar, or they used to pre-COVID, every November. So finally, it was 2017. I was convinced by some friends to have a table there at the bazaar. So I created some holiday decorations and things and had a table and really, really enjoyed it. So I thought, okay, this is something I could really jump into. And I knew of some people who had Etsy shops and things like that. So I did not start in Etsy, but I did want to go ahead and start my own business. And I was a little bit nervous, especially thinking about kind of like paperwork type stuff, accounting and things like that. So before I officially launched, I decided to take a class with, her name is Kim. Her business now is called Hoopla Letters. It used to be Manny Young Calligraphy. So she used to be someone who's pretty local here to the Philly area. But she moved, she had a class called Handcrafted Hustle. So I took this class and we're talked about just kind of setting the foundation so that your business was ready, just paperwork wise and kind of legally to jump off the ground. And so then I took that in 2018. And then at that same school bazaar in 2018 was my first official craft show as Keystreet Creations.
Awesome. That is one thing that definitely held me back too from starting was sales tax and paperwork and what do you need and, what can you get away with not having. And yeah, that was definitely scary setting all that up. Did that go over sales tax ID and all that kind of stuff?
It did generally, because, it varies by state. So she gave us the resources to look up for our own states, what the requirements were and everything. And the Pennsylvania small business website is actually really, really helpful. So I looked on there and looked at the paperwork that I needed and stuff for that. So that covered a lot of kind of the general sales tax stuff. From there, I actually joined some groups on Facebook to kind of help with some of that. And, as a math person, I kind of was running my own spreadsheets there for a while, but it was last year, January 2021, I took an inventory workshop because I realized I had been actually doing my inventory all wrong. So I took this inventory workshop from a woman named Christina Coyle. She's an enrolled agent. So she is, a tax professional that can also represent people if they get audited and everything. Not that I've hired her as my accountant or anything, but she runs this inventory workshop and she recommended this company called Paper and Spark and their spreadsheets for handmade sellers. And so I use these spreadsheets now for not only my inventory, but also for my accounting and expenses and things like that, and kind of keeping track and it'll do all the calculations for me of my, income to expenses and my profit margins and things, which is pretty cool. So I waited a while to jump into all that because that can be kind of expensive. And when I was first starting out, I was a little nervous about spending that kind of money on these tools, which I kind of wished I had done that earlier. But I really wasn't sure where the business was going at the time. I was just trying it out and seeing how it went. And so once I finally started getting more serious about it and everything, I was like, all right, it's time to invest in some of these tools.
And did you learn about all those in your groups online?
Yeah. So Christina runs a group called Accounting and U.S. Tax Compliance. And I don't remember how I first found out about the group, but once I joined the group, that's how I heard about like the inventory workshop. And then from the inventory workshop, I heard about these spreadsheets.
I am not a math person, so props to you because I am horrible at math and everybody knows it. One thing that was confusing to me was sales tax is different than your tax that you have to pay at the end of the year. I think a lot of people get those two things confused. They're very, very different things. And like you said, it's different in every state what your sales tax is. And I know for my things, some of my things are taxed and some of my things are not taxed. And so then that gets really confusing. But then all that's different than your actual, income tax that you have to pay. Do you do your own income taxes for your business?
I do for now. I do think that if, depending on how big it gets, then I would probably want to hire someone. I feel like I'm still pretty small enough that I can, and I keep things pretty simple as far as like what my expenses are and stuff. So I feel like it's pretty easy for me to be able to fill out my Schedule C, and then I just give that to my husband. He does our taxes.
Nice.
And so I think if we were already paying someone in general to do our taxes, I probably would have just kind of added them on. But at least for now, our lives are pretty simple tax wise. So we just kind of take care of that. Although it is a little scary though.
It is scary. That's why I was really scared about it. And I knew somebody who hired a tax guy who specializes in small businesses. So I just give everything to him because I was like, I have no clue about any of this. And I, try to ask my dad usually used to do my taxes, and he was like, oh, no, I think you should talk to somebody. And I was like, okay. It is a little pricey, but I feel a lot better because that whole thing just makes me so nervous.
And the whole idea, honestly, to me is a little bit silly that, here we get taxes taken out. And so then we have to do this paperwork at the end of the year to see if we can get any of it back. But it's really on you if you're doing it correctly, but it's also complicated. And it just seems like a lot.
I know.
And that it doesn't have to be as complicated as it is.
I know. So you make pillows for your small business. How did you get started doing that? And when did you start sewing?
So when I first started Keystreet Creations, I was all over the place as far as what I was selling. It was kind of whatever I was interested in making at the time, what I thought was popular at the time. I had some of the like faux leather earrings for a while. I had a lot of different things. And as I was thinking about, like, again, getting more serious about the business, I'm like, I feel like I need a niche. I need to figure out what my thing is. And during the pandemic, actually, so when school closed down and I was, home all day, I started sewing more. So actually, getting back to your question about when I first started sewing, I was first introduced to sewing in middle school in my home economics class. And that's when I first learned to use like a serger and everything. I loved the serger. And so I was making, just the normal stuff that you do in home ec class, like the pajama pants and I made this volleyball pillow. So we got to do like our own project that we wanted to do. We could buy these kits, and I played volleyball at the time. So I made this volleyball pillow. But then after that, I didn't really sew until, I don't know, it was like probably 12, 13 years later. There was a woman at my church who, she made these beautiful quilts. And she agreed to teach me how to quilt. So I was probably mid to late 20s at that point. And so I got back into sewing, but I was always doing that at her house. And then when I got married, we registered for stuff on Amazon in addition to like Bed Bath and Beyond and stuff, because you can just add anything. And so just kind of on a whim, I had added a sewing machine on there, and my mother-in-law bought that for me for my shower gift. And so I just started getting back into it then whenever I had time. Really, first of all, to finish that quilt, because the woman who taught me how to quilt actually passed away while we were in the middle of the quilt top. And so my mother-in-law, she bought me the sewing machine, and she said, now you have no excuse. You need to finish that quilt. And so, yeah, it was a great little push. So I did finish that. And then I started sewing like baby quilts for friends and
Mhm.
stuff. But then again, at the beginning of the pandemic, I had bought a lot more fabric. I was sewing masks for a while, as you know. We were both
Yeah.
we were both sewing masks there for a
Yeah.
while, but I wanted something different to sew. And so I was looking, on Pinterest as people do, and I saw these reading pillows. And so this pillow with the pouch on the front to hold the book and everything. And I just thought this was adorable. So I made a few for some kids of friends of mine, and they were just so fun and unique that I decided I wanted to try then to build them into the business.
Mhm.
And they took off pretty nicely. So at that point, that's when I decided to really focus on the pillows. So I do sew the pocket pillows or book pillows, or I call them a couple different things, out of the soft flannel.
I didn't realize you hand painted the canvas pillows. That's awesome. I was reading on your website the other day.
Yeah, the canvas pillows. So I don't sew those pillow covers. I buy those pillow covers for now, and I make stencils with my Cricut, and I hand stencil them. So I didn't want to use the heat transferred vinyl for those pillows. I wanted to use the fabric paint because I felt a little bit more comfortable actually selling that, knowing that they would be a bit more durable. So yeah, I do hand paint those. So that's what I focus on right now, are those two styles of pillows.
Yeah, I love them. They're so creative and they're so unique too. And the flannel ones are so cozy. They just look,
Oh my gosh,
I can
they're
just
so
imagine,
soft.
like just curling up with a little book. Do you do book recommendations with your pillows too?
I don't really give book recommendations as far as like when I'm selling them, because they are geared towards children. I don't have any children of my own, and I teach high school students. So I bought a couple of books to put on display, and I asked some of my coworkers, I'm like, all right, what do your kids read? And so they are on display now at my craft shows, like inside the book pillows and stuff. So I don't give out recommendations as far as for the kids go.
Mhm.
They probably, I mean, I myself, I love historical fiction, so I
Yeah.
wouldn't really I wouldn't really be recommending that for the children.
That might be a little deep for them, huh?
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
make ornaments too around Christmas time.
That is true. So I do, that's something that I kept from back when I was kind of doing everything. I didn't purchase any additional like ornament blanks this year, so I do have some going that I can still make for this coming year, and then I can think about if I want to restock those. But those were actually really popular this past December. I don't even know if I brought them out in December of 2020, but December 2021 I brought them out, and they were really popular because I think they're unique, because it's that like floating style ornament, so it's something different. I do, so the microwavable bowl cozies, depending on which market I'm going to, I don't always bring them, because I feel like, especially some areas where there are a lot of sewers, like there are a lot of people that make them. And I have to be honest, I don't know how they charge, like they charge way less than I do. And I don't know how they do it and make any money, because those things take me a long time. So some of those markets I won't even bring them, because mine are, I feel like, significantly more expensive than some of the others.
I was talking about that with Amanda. I just said, I don't understand. There's people that sell the same things that I do. And I don't know if they get their fabric for free or they don't charge for their labor or what, but
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like they're really ripping themselves off. And then it makes people confused, because then they look at my things and they're like, well, why is her thing so much more expensive? And it's
Mm-hmm.
the same as this over here. And a lot of that honestly happens on Etsy. It's so easy to open an Etsy store. And I think a lot of people don't sit down and think about, there's a whole equation that has to go into how you price your items.
Mm-hmm.
And that's different for every person. Like the example I said with Amanda was these blankets that I wanted to make, and people were charging them for like less than I could buy the fabric for. And I did
Wow.
not understand. I don't know, they must have been using some crazy coupons or something. So I was just like, all right, I guess I'll just stay away from that.
I do think that it's very common in the maker community for people to feel bad about charging what something is worth, as far as like,
Mm-hmm.
again, the time that you've put into it, and the materials and things. Or, I'll see it in groups all the time, like maker
Yeah.
groups, like they just want to use like one certain formula, like, oh, you just do your cost of materials times 3,
Right.
which is not a good formula.
No.
And so there's like all of this pricing, like that people feel bad about, but it's like, I think especially now, because everything is costing more, just materials wise and stuff too, that's something that small business owners really definitely need to consider as well. Not to jump on the like, oh, well, we're just going to charge more too, but things are costing more on our end as well. Yeah, thinking through pricing is really difficult. That was one of the hardest
Yeah.
things about, I think about running the business is finding that good price point between valuing your time, but also that people are going to be willing to pay. There is a book, I have purchased it, and it's been recommended to me from multiple sources that I guess that's a personal goal for myself related to the business is to actually like read this book and put some of the things into practice. But it's called, it sounds terrible, but it's called Profit First.
Okay.
And have you heard of that?
No, uh-uh.
So, and again, it's some of the small business like groups that I'm in, like on Facebook or whatever. It's really about just like we've been talking about valuing, your time and everything and using that to drive your formulas and and it's a whole mindset too. And it's more than that because it's a whole book.
Yeah.
But, people just talk about how that has really transformed how they think about their business and everything. And I think a lot of people were really worried that their sales would incredibly suffer after implementing some of these ideas, but they're finding that to be the opposite. And they're finding their business is actually financially like moving forward and making progress rather than, just kind of always scraping by. And they're actually able to legitimately pay themselves from the business.
I'll have to check that out. That sounds good. Do you usually work on your craft when you get home from work, or do you save that for the weekends, or sort of a mixture?
So ideally, I would work on it when I got home during the week and not just on the weekends. Right now, it's mostly happening on the weekends, mainly because I'm so tired when I get home from school. School has always been kind of exhausting, just teaching and everything, but lately it has been even more so. And so by the time I get home, and get dinner going and get cleaned up, I'm dead. And
Yeah.
so I do try to find some things I can do, like if we're sitting on the couch watching TV, like not creating things, but some of the back end stuff, cutting out the little care cards that I put in with the pillow covers and the pillows and things, or, just some of those stamping bags to get ready for shows and stuff. So I try to do those. My husband is so supportive. So I'm in the rec room right now. It's really kind of the craft room, but there is a couch in here and a TV. And so he's like, I would not mind just sitting up there with you if you needed to sew and stuff. That way we can still hang out and spend time together, but I could still get stuff done. So he does keep proposing that, and I will hopefully take him up on that offer very soon. But right now it's just been very tiring.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of custom orders?
So, yes and no. A couple of my pillow designs are made in order to be customed. Like I have a monogram one that, it has to be customized, as well as one where it's like the family names. So the first names of all the family members on the pillow and stuff. So I have a couple designs that are naturally custom. So I wouldn't necessarily call those custom orders, but they are kind of. But I do have more and more people, and especially repeat customers, coming to me now and saying like, hey, could you make a pillow with like this kind of design on it? And so like we'll go back and forth with some images and stuff. And as long as it's something that works with my process, that isn't too like intricate and everything, as far as like little pieces and stuff, it usually works out really nice. And so that's fun to be able to work on that with people and come up with something that would be special. For Christmas, one of my customers, actually her husband, came to me and said, I want to get this for my wife. Like, can you help me with a design and stuff?
Nice.
So that's fun to have those repeat customers and those relationships.
Yeah, that's cool. So you don't sell on Etsy at all right now, right?
I do not. I have my own website.
Is your website through Square Online, or is it something different?
It is through Square Online. So when I first started and I was trying to think through my online presence, I was really hesitant to get onto Etsy in the beginning just because of all of the fees and stuff. And I know I just heard that they're increasing again. But I knew that building my own was also going to be a little bit problematic because, with Etsy, you have the audience there, right, built into the website because they're so well known. You just have to draw them to your store and everything. So with your own website, you really have to drive the traffic there. Having that built and ready to go pre-pandemic was actually really helpful when I was selling the masks and stuff. So I don't sell as many of the pillows on there. So it has slowed down, since I stopped making the masks. But when I was trying to decide, there's so many different website hosts out there and everything
Yes.
too. I was already using Square for all of my payment processing for markets and stuff with credit cards and everything. So I started looking into their website, and I had their free one for a while. They do have a free version, and that was fine. But I did at one point just decide, you know what? I want to pay this annual fee and get some of these extra features on here. It's not perfect, but it is good. And I do try to get on there more frequently anyway now and like update things. So that's the trick. I'd rather
Mhm.
just be like making things all the time.
I know.
And then I remember like, oh, I really should update the website, or I really need
Mhm.
to do some bookkeeping, or, the back end of the business can be fun, but it's a little bit tedious. And I would much rather just be like painting or sewing or,
I know.
or, things like that.
Yeah, me too. Every craft show, you have to answer certain questions like what's your social media? And, they want to know if you have your own website. And I do. I have scrappystitch.com. I've had that for a year. I bought it off of Wix and I thought, oh, like Wix is really good. I'm going to build this awesome website. But it's almost like there's too many options on Wix.
Mm-hmm.
And I was all over the place with my website. So for the craft shows, I just kept putting my website's under construction. Well, it's been under construction for like a year now. I need to just
Mm-hmm.
pick something and go. But right after I bought my Wix website, I didn't realize that Square had the online business too. And I was like, I wish I would have gone with Square because it was a lot simpler and like there's a lot less choices. The other thing that I've been noticing about websites, like I said earlier, some of my things are taxed and some are not taxed. And there is no way on some of these websites to mark the different items if they're taxed or not. It's like your site is
Oh.
either all taxed or not taxed. And I don't feel right about charging tax for things that I know are not taxed.
Mm-hmm.
So that was sort of driving me nuts. And I'm like, there has to be a way to do this properly because I was
Mm-hmm.
in a brick and mortar store. We added our own items in ourselves. There was like just a little toggle that you would click. Yes, this is taxed, or no, this isn't.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so it was driving me nuts that I paid a lot of money for my Wix store, and that wasn't even a feature. I had to buy another upgraded tier to be able to set tax designations or tax zones or something like that. But then I was playing around with the Square online shop because I'm gonna try
Mm-hmm.
to switch. And that's right on there. You as you put your items in.
Yeah,
And I
for
was like,
each
oh my
item.
gosh. It is very basic, but everything I want is on the Square one. So I think I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
switch more to that. I want to look into Shopify too. I know a lot of people have Shopify and they're really happy with it. But I don't know. I started messing around with the Square one and I sort of liked it. So
Yeah, no, that feature is really nice, especially too, because it also distinguishes, like if someone is ordering from out of state, they don't
Mhm.
get charged the Pennsylvania sales tax. It handles all of that, which is really, really nice. Actually, so another plug for those spreadsheets that I use. So Janet LeBlanc is the woman who does these spreadsheets with Paper and Spark, and she has a different spreadsheet for different platforms. So she has one
Mhm.
specifically for Etsy, one specifically for Square, and you can have like add-ons if you do like both and everything. And so I just at the end of each month, I just download my transactions for the month and then
Mm.
plop them into a certain page of her spreadsheet, and it does all the calculations for me,
Oh,
which
that's awesome.
is fantastic.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. But yeah, so Square will take care of all of that. It will tax the things, like you said, you can do it by item, but also in terms of in-state versus out-of-state orders
Mhm.
and everything as well. It differentiates all of that. The one thing that I don't like, so I don't ship the pillows right now. I do
Mm.
ship the pillow covers, like the canvas style pillow covers, but
Mhm.
the pocket pillows, I don't because it's really expensive to ship
Oh,
pillows.
really?
Yes, because they're so bulky. It's not because they're heavy,
Oh.
but because they're so bulky, they're really expensive to ship. And the ways that you set up shipping on the Square website, like I can't just say like, okay, if they get a pillow, then the shipping cost needs to increase to this amount. And so like it's either like one flat fee per order for the shipping or a fee per item, which I don't want to have charge a fee for every single item that they put in.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think there's one you can do like per weight. so that's one thing that's really preventing me, because I don't want to set my shipping rate to be the cost of shipping a pillow if someone's going on there to buy a pillow cover or one of the other small items that's not
Mm,
going to cost that much for shipping.
gotcha. Did you design your logo yourself?
Oh, I did not.
Hmm.
So when I was taking that class to start off the business, we talked a bit about branding
Hmm.
and everything. And I have a former roommate who is a graphic designer. I know she does some freelance stuff on the side and everything. So I asked her if that's a job she'd be willing to take on for me. So she was like, yeah, I would love to. We talked a little bit about kind of what I pictured the business to be, because at the time it was still, so new and everything. I
Hmm.
sent her some of the colors I was thinking about at the time. I sent her like 4 or 5, but I really only used like 2. But I sent her like a color scheme, and she's actually the one that came up with the design. And so the key has like 3 little kind of circles in it as like a nod towards like a street lamp.
Oh.
So for like Keystreet Creations, yeah, it was so cool when she did that. So she gave me a few different versions, right? There's like a vertical version and a horizontal version,
Hmm.
and some where it looks like a sign. There's different varieties depending on what I need to do with them. And she also gave me some with like transparent backgrounds, some on the different colors that I sent her. It's been wonderful, like a full package of everything. I'm not good with like logos and things like that. So thankfully, I had someone that I could turn to for that.
That's awesome. I love hearing people's logos that have such personal touches or things that you wouldn't necessarily notice just by looking at it, because mine has stuff like that too. I had a very distinct idea for mine, and I tried and tried on Canva to make it work, and it was just not
Mhm.
working. And then I realized, like you said, you want ones with transparent backgrounds. Did she give you like a vector image too, so you can blow it up really big?
I believe so. They're all very high quality images. Yeah.
I didn't realize how important that would be. And I thought to myself, I'm spending all this time designing this. And then it's very small scale, and I know nothing about enlarging stuff. And I tried to enlarge what I had, and it was all pixelated. So I was like, I better just hire a professional because, eventually I
Hmm.
want a table runner, which I got
Hmm.
last year. And I'm super happy with how mine turned out. It's worth it to hire a good designer just so you have options, like you said. And I didn't
Definitely.
realize how many people have multiple versions of their logo too. Because, like you said, depending on where you want to use it, it's the same, but just slightly different. You have your vertical one, which is probably the one you use for Instagram and stuff for the cover photos. Because having
Yeah.
one that's more wide and rectangle, it really wouldn't show up on those really small, like circles of the cover photos for Instagram and TikTok and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So that's something to keep in mind too when designing a logo.
Yeah, because the version of my logo that I have on my business cards, it's different than the one that's on my table runner,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, because I have the vertical one on the table runner, and
Yeah.
then I have a different version on the business cards and stuff. So,
Hmm.
hmm
What all social media do you have? I know you have Instagram. Do you do anything else?
I have my Instagram attached to a Facebook page, but that's about it for right now. I know for you, and I know for so many other makers, that TikTok has been a good
Hmm.
boost to their business. I just feel like that's not something I have time to figure out right
It's a lot of
now.
work.
Yeah, and so because even like on Instagram, I haven't gotten into doing like the reels and stuff like that
Hmm.
yet either. Like I'm still pretty like basic with all of that.
Hmm.
So maybe this summer, when I'm, not in school anymore, that could be one of my projects to at least get started with like some type of video thing. But I also know for myself, I don't personally want to get sucked into TikTok, because that's something I could easily do, is just sit there forever and just
Hmm.
scroll through videos and things. So I know that that is something that could really boost the business and everything and be really helpful. I just don't have the time to kind of manage that right now, because I barely post on Instagram the way it is.
It's interesting to see how different people take to social media because some people only strictly do Instagram and that's it.
Hmm.
And I thought it was sort of weird too how Instagram is going more towards reels and promoting that more because like TikTok is already out there.
Right.
I don't know. I sort of just liked having Instagram as the pictures to just scroll through. Do you have any groups online, any Facebook groups or anything that you would recommend? I know you mentioned a couple of them earlier.
I'm part of like a few of those like kind of vendor, like Pennsylvania vendor groups, like
Me
looking
too.
for shows. But like I get wary of those now because there's so much scamming
Yes.
happening now
Mm-hmm.
with regard to shows. And that even happened with the show that I, was planning right last year.
Really?
It only happened a couple times, and I like deleted those comments and everything. But just yeah, people starting to comment right away, like, we still have vendor spots open. Message me, or send an email to this address, and
Wow.
like it's crazy. And I feel bad because I know people are falling for it.
I hate that people do that to unsuspecting people. It's hard enough to make it as a small business. You do most of your craft shows by yourself too, don't you?
I do. So some of the bigger ones, I've had a friend come with me. Like
Mm-hmm.
one of my friends met me at the Lidditz show. She didn't come with me to set up in the morning, but she did come a little bit later and hung out with me during the day. I always wish I had someone with me, but I always kind of feel bad asking people to come. And then my husband, he spends a lot of time on the weekends doing projects around the house. Like we bought
Mm-hmm.
a really, really old house. And so I know he likes to do that. So I don't want to like take him away from that. But being by myself has forced me to talk to other people and to meet people,
Mm-hmm.
like meeting you and
Yeah.
and Adrian and Amanda and Erica. I think you've met Erica
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
before.
I met
So
her.
that's one of the best things for me. Like I really enjoy going to craft shows, and I enjoy selling my items, and I enjoy purchasing from other makers and everything. But I think one of my favorite things is really getting to know other crafters and
Mhm.
makers and developing those relationships and everything. Like that's just been really, really fun.
Yeah, I like
So,
that too. I usually try to see who else is at the craft shows that I sign up for, and I'll go through people's Instagrams. And then I'm
mm-hmm.
like, okay, well, they look cool. I'm gonna go try to talk to that person, if I can sneak away from from my
Yeah.
booth. And so I just try to meet a couple new people every craft show that I do.
Mm-hmm. I know I feel a little silly sometimes going up to them and being like,
Me
I
too.
follow your Instagram,
Yeah, me too.
like I'm like a fangirl or something, but I'm
Yeah.
like, but I'm actually there as a maker too, and so and occasionally when someone does that to me, I feel like, oh, like wow, I'm like legit.
Yeah, it's a nice
So
feeling.
that's fun.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's a nice feeling when people come up to you at craft shows and they're like, we bought your stuff before, or we like your stuff. Or they find something that's the absolute perfect gift for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. What are the top 5 things that you bring to a craft show?
Oh, so other than, the necessaries like the inventory and the display
Hmm.
items and stuff, I always bring a charged external battery because I use my phone to do the transactions and everything. So in case I run out of battery there, and snacks. Oh my gosh, snacks
Hmm.
are are absolutely necessary because you never know what kind of food is going to be available at a show. Like you'll usually know ahead of time if there's like a food truck or like which ones will be there. Oh, a variety of being able to take like different types of payments and stuff. So along with my Square reader, I always have cash too, just in case. Like there was the one show I was at in December where I didn't end up having a problem, but all the people around me were having problems with their squares
Oh,
and like
no.
not yeah, and not connecting and everything like that. Thankfully, I don't know why my square was working and theirs were not, but I always make sure I have cash too so I can take that
Hmm.
payment if my Square reader is down. So I don't remember if that was 5.
I wasn't
But
counting either. You're the math one. What the heck? No.
I know. My mental math is not always great, which is hilarious. And the kids think it's really funny. But I'm like, no, no, no. I can do higher level math. I said, I can't always do the addition and subtraction. I'm actually curious to know the same thing for you. What would you say?
So, my top 5 things are I have a helper because I have done shows by myself, but I don't prefer it
Mm-hmm.
because I like to wander around. And it's definitely nice to have a helper with you for bathroom breaks and stuff. Water. I drink a lot of water. I actually bring a little cooler with me with ice. Oh, and that's another thing. This is off of my 5, so you're going to get 6 from me. Kevin's mom started bringing to the summer outdoor shows a little Ziploc baggie with face cloths in it that are wet that we put in the cooler. So when it
Mm.
gets really hot, we can just, like dab it on our face. It really helps you cool down. That was such a good idea. I have been doing that even if she doesn't come with me. It definitely helps.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
A way to accept credit cards. I actually bring a little Chromebook with me. That's Kevin's. So you don't have to look on your phone for the thing. So I just have a really old Chromebook set up that I bring up my Square. You can see it. Everything's a lot bigger on the screen. And I have my little Square plugged into that.
Do you use like a hotspot
I use my phone.
then
Yeah,
to-
I use my
okay.
phone for the hotspot. Yep. Do you have the way to accept the chip, the upgraded Square? I just still use the free one.
Yeah, I bought that. I think it was during the pandemic. So I live in Pottstown, and there is a Pottstown farm. So that's like the local farmers market. And there's another maker that I know was at Pottstown Farm. And I'm like, oh, so they accept makers, not just farmers and food vendors and things. When I was getting ready to do these Pottstown farm markets, I was like, my Square reader that I had at the time just like stopped working. I think I paid like $10 for it and it like stopped charging. When it was time to get a new one, I don't even think that one was available anymore. They must have just decided it wasn't a great one. So then they had this contactless one. And, I just figured with everyone being so nervous to handle a lot of the same items and stuff that I would do this contactless chip reader one so that I could just like hold it out and people could insert their own card instead of like handing me their card and everything. So that was a pretty good investment, I would say.
The two other things that I bring with me to craft shows are business cards.
Oh, yes.
I was convinced I was going to get away with like not having business cards because I had the same business cards that I made for years and years and years and years. And it was like I could not get rid of them. And then all of a sudden, people lately have really been asking for them a lot. So what I decided to do, because I feel like you're always adding something or adding a new form of social media or, like I'm trying to get off Etsy and start my own website. So what I did was I put my logo on the front and my store name. And on the back, I got a QR code. So people can just scan the QR code and then it brings up all my links to all my social media, to my shop, whether I'm on Etsy, whether I'm starting a new social media platform, it's all going to be right there. And then I don't need to reorder all new business cards. I can just update the link online. And as they scan it, then they can just see what's current. You know what I mean?
That is fantastic. The next time we're at a show together, I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah,
and
I'll
scan
show
your
you.
card and everything.
Yeah. So I have the QR code, but then I have also the main like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok logo so people know. And I think it actually says scrappystitch.com on the back too. That was the main thing that I wanted was this QR code that people could just scan and go and then know what all my current things are.
Well, that's really good. I think just about every time I've reordered business cards, I've changed something
Yeah.
on them.
And it's
so-
expensive and it's like wasteful too. What I was going to do was just get something with the QR code on that says, oh, you can scan that.
I've seen those. It shows.
Yeah. But some people still want your actual business card or, some people really aren't into social media or they don't know what the QR codes are. So that's why I was still like, all right, I'm going to have some that I can give people that has a good mixture of everything on the back.
That's a really good idea.
Thank you. And then the last thing is a good attitude to be ready for anything because all kinds of great things and also weird things happen at a craft show.
Yes, we've talked about some of those things.
Yes, I had someone try to literally buy the pictures of my nephew one time that I used for display, and I kept telling her, it's not for sale. Those are my nephews. This is my display. And she was not hearing it. She insisted she wanted to buy these pictures. It was so weird.
That is really funny.
No.
Yeah, you have better stories than I do, I think, with some of that stuff.
Oh, I wanted to talk to you about you organized a craft show last year.
Oh, I did.
I thought that was really cool. And that is a goal of mine that I really want to organize one too. And I find it really hard to find information out there on how to organize one, or how do you know who to contact? And
Mm-hmm.
some people said you need permits, and some people said, oh no, you just do it. And I'm like, well, that can't be right. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. What
Yeah.
inspired you to organize a craft show?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure it was a ton of work.
It was. I think I would like to do it again,
Yeah.
especially if I can make it more regular. It does take a lot of time. So then I'd have
Mhm.
to think through like, okay, how much time am I going to dedicate to actually like hosting a craft show versus like being a vendor,
Mhm.
kind of thing. So that's something I would definitely have to think through. One of the big reasons why I wanted to organize one is because, like I had mentioned, for me, where I live, there aren't many good
Mhm.
shows in this area. I end up traveling at least an hour for any like shows that I need to go to. And so during the pandemic, there were so many shows that were happening out in Lancaster that were inside malls because, even though you weren't supposed to have these big events, in the mall you could because it was considered retail. Like, they
Mhm.
kind of had like a loophole there. And so I reached out to one of the malls near me because I just knew that they had empty storefronts. Unfortunately, malls are just dying,
Yeah.
and so I reached out and I said, hey, like, I am a part of these markets out in Lancaster inside malls. Like, is this something you would be interested in? Do you have a good space in mind for it? So I just reached out to the mall management, whatever the general email was that I found on the website and stuff. And so I got connected with the woman who's in charge of those types of events for this like chain of malls, and just kind of went through there. And she's the one that did tell me the permits and everything, it's actually different by township. So this company manages like 3 different malls, and she said, oh yeah, so this mall you'll have to pay the township like a permit fee, and the fire marshal will have to come and inspect and everything like that, but the fee's like a one-time thing. She's like, but if you do it over at this mall, the township gets a percentage of
Mm.
something. And so I was like, oh yeah. She's like, so you don't want to do that for like a
Yeah.
one-time event. And so she was like kind of talking with me through some of these things. So we did end up just doing the one where I had the one-time fee to the township for the permit, the occupancy permit. I really did love it. Oh my gosh, I had such a good group of vendors
Mhm. It
there.
was a cool
They
show.
were, yeah, it was really high quality variety. I really, really lucked out. And I wish that we would have been able to draw in more people.
Mhm.
And that was like one of the things that I thought through, like, okay, if I could do this on like a monthly basis, like again, some of these other ones that we've
Mhm.
participated in, then it could like really build a following and stuff. But I think at this point, that is probably more work than I'm able to put into it right now.
Mhm.
Even though, again, it would be nice to have something that consistent in this area that is like just for makers. But it was just really cool. Like, I drew from a lot of my own experiences of what I liked or didn't like
Mhm.
from various shows and stuff. So I was just trying my hardest to make sure this was like as easy as possible. And as I was checking in with everyone during that day, I said something about like it being my first show, like organizing. And one of the girls was like, seriously? Like, she was surprised. And so that was like such a huge compliment. I was so excited. And so I was very encouraged by that. So maybe one day
Mhm.
that will be kind of what I turn to. But right now I'm definitely enjoying more of the making and stuff. And so I
Mhm.
think I'd want to continue focusing on that for now. I'm always keeping an eye on like what a good space could be in the area for that, because that's kind of hard too. So I think if something just kind of like strikes me one day as like, oh my gosh, this would be the perfect space, I'd probably be
Mhm.
willing to pursue that a little bit more.
I loved it because it was inside. We didn't have to worry about weather.
Hmm.
I thought our space sizes were nice. It was very well organized, I will say, because
Thank you.
I think that makes a really good event when a maker organizes it, because
Hmm.
you know what you want in a show. I think we all had a little space in between. We weren't right next to each other.
There were still all of the like social distancing things happening and stuff too.
Oh, that's true too.
Mhm.
You did a good job communicating all the info to us too. Because I've done some shows where you don't even know where your stand is until you show up that day.
Mm-hmm.
I got there, they told me where my spot was. I went to set up and somebody was already set up in my stand. And then it was just pure chaos after that of trying to get somebody to help you. I mean, it was just, there's
Oh
some
boy.
really, really poorly organized craft shows out there. And until you
Mm-hmm.
start doing them to learn which are good ones and which are, you should probably stay away from. I don't know. I just don't see how some people can get away with that.
Yeah.
I loved it. I thought it was really nice.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I did
Yeah.
have a lot of fun with it. And I think that if I were to do it more often, it wouldn't
Mhm.
take up as much time,
Yeah.
for each show, especially if I were to build like a brand. So then I would, have those things consistently. Maybe one day.
Yeah. You had a good mixture of different vendors there too, because
Mm,
sometimes you go to shows and it's 15
all the
jewelry
same thing.
people and yeah, and it's
Exactly.
all the same thing. So it's really hard for certain
Hmm.
vendors to do well because there's almost too much competition.
Yeah. And I really lucked out with that. I didn't have to do a whole lot of the juried selection, kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing. So like there were a few people on the wait list, but again, as a first time market, I didn't have like a ton of people applying, but the people who did apply, like it was just naturally a variety of people, which was
Yeah.
really, really cool. But I do think that one day, I tell my husband this, I think my dream thing would be not just to like run markets, but I think I would like to have a handmade store, like a maker store. I know there's a lot popping up around,
That would be
Um,
cool.
there aren't really any, again, near me. I feel like they're all popping up kind of more towards like Lancaster. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's even some like kind of near where you are.
Mm-hmm.
I one day maybe have
Oh, that
one
would be so
around
cool.
here. I think that'd be fun. And just
Yeah.
supporting local businesses and stuff, it's just something I'm very, very passionate about, and not just like handcrafted items, but like local farmers,
Mm-hmm.
local, I'm just something I've been really, really getting more and more invested in.
A lot of the people who buy my things are makers themselves. And it's just really cool to see everybody supporting everybody else. And I think we all realize there's more that goes into it behind the scenes than just, having product out there. There's so much to it. And I think that's what makes everybody support each other because we know that a lot goes into it.
I've always enjoyed going to craft shows and bazaars and things, but sometimes I would get a little bit of sticker shock, and I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like they want what?
Yeah.
And but now being on the other side of it, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So it's so much more than just the materials. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the expertise, it's all of the time you go into perfecting what you're doing
Mhm.
and the time into making that actual product as well. And there's just so much that goes into it that I never even
Mhm.
realized before I started kind of doing it on my own.
I know Kevin's mom, when she helps me, it changed her whole mind about everything too, because same thing. I was like, I would never pay that for handmade stuff. And now she helps me and she sees that we're there like an hour before the show starts, sometimes even longer than that, setting everything
Mm-hmm.
up, perfecting our display. I
Mm-hmm.
make my own packaging things or even just simple things like how do I want my business card to look? How do I want my website to look? It
Mm-hmm.
takes a lot of time.
People like look at your booth and they're like, oh, that's really nice. You don't always think about the time that goes into it or the
Mhm.
thought that goes into it. Not even just the time in like setting it up, but the time into sourcing just the right thing that you want for that
Yeah.
look. There's so much that goes into it.
There's a lot of times I have an idea for something, but then I can't think of, well, what is that exactly called? And then I spend a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time researching to try to figure out, well, what would that be called? Even just simple like the wire grids that I have. I had
Mm-hmm.
no idea what they were called. I saw them being used. Pegboard, I think that's what I was looking up. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I know that that is not what I'm going for. And I
Mm-hmm.
actually got my standing racks from Payless when they were going out of business.
Really? Huh.
Yes. A lot of times you can go to a store that's going out of business and check out their displays, and sometimes they'll work for your booth or, maybe you're
Mm-hmm.
starting your own store.
Yeah.
And so I went and they had those big giant 6-foot grid walls,
Mm-hmm.
freestanding racks, and I paid like half the price. I got 4 of them because I was like, in case they get knocked around and get ruined, lugging these to craft shows all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I use those all the time. I love them. I love how you display your canvas pillows too, because it was a genius idea, an old photo backdrop that somebody gave you.
Mm-hmm.
So you use the poles and then are your shower rings too?
They are curtain clips.
Curtain clips. Okay, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just clip them to that. So it's perfect because people can rifle through them and it looks really nice how you have it all set up.
Thank you. I forget exactly how that came to me. The rack itself came from my husband's cousin. We used the backdrop for her bridal shower, like
Mhm.
photos and things like that. But after the shower, she was like, I don't think I'm ever going to use this. Do you think you could use this for your business?
Mhm.
And so I was like, oh, sure. I'm sure I could figure out something. And up until that point, I had only been bringing my pillows with the pillow inside to the craft shows.
Mhm.
I had not been selling the cover separately. And that was fine, but it is very bulky,
Mhm.
And then trying to figure out how to display them. I was bringing this like plastic 4-tiered shelf that I was like the Sterilite thing that I was putting together and taking apart every craft show. And it was just, it was cumbersome. But at the same time, I was having people ask me at craft shows, like if I sold the covers separately, or I would get comments from someone who says, oh my gosh, if I bring home another pillow, my husband will kill me.
Mhm.
Right. And one of my friends who had purchased a couple pillows from me, she would come to me with more ideas. She's like, oh, it's springtime. So you have a spring design. And
Mhm.
then she's like, but you know what? I only need the cover because I already have the pillow. I'll just change it out. And so then that's kind of got the wheels turning like, okay, like maybe I can sell both at the craft shows, the covers, or like with the inserts as well. And then that combined with having this rack now that I got from my husband's cousin, I was like, oh, this could be cool. And because I used to work retail. So then I was just thinking about like just a shopping rack. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it just all came together and I love it.
It's cool to see how everybody sets up their booths differently, what they're using and how they change it over time. And it's really neat.
hmm Something I'm always thinking about. I feel like I haven't changed my enough in a while, but it works.
One thing I added was the clothing rack.
The one that I borrowed.
Yeah, I got shower curtain rings and then the binder clips, those little black like book binder clips. So
Yeah.
that's what I was hanging my stuff off of. And yeah, it saved a ton of space. It was 2 levels, so I could
Mm,
fit a ton of things. So I think I'm going to keep using that. I originally got that because I had 2 craft shows going on the same day. And I don't know why I did
mm,
that. It stressed me out way, way, way too much. So Kevin's mom and my sister went to do one, and then Kevin and I went to help at another one. So I wanted everything to be as easy as possible for them to set up and take
hmm
down. So I found that on Amazon. It was super easy to put together. So I was like,
hmm
okay, I'm just going to throw everything on that and a few things on a table or two. And then they won't have to deal with tearing down a whole lot of stuff and lugging it out to their car. And plus, they didn't really have a big SUV like I do to shove all this stuff in. So I
Right.
didn't make sure it fit all in their car. I will never do that again. Never. 2 craft shows in one day. Did you ever do that? 2 craft shows in one
Oh
day? Oh my
no.
gosh. That was awful. I don't know what I was thinking.
In December, we did the 2 in 1 weekend, right?
Hmm.
And so I can't even do that anymore. I'm like, this was too much
Yeah.
for me.
I had like 8 shows that I did in like a 5 week period. And I don't know why I signed up for so many. It was crazy.
Oh my gosh, when I first started out, and some people were talking about doing one a month, I'm like, wow, that's so much. So now I'm like, some months I'm doing 2, and I have to really limit myself too and like not do more than that, especially
Hmm.
just with school and everything. And my stuff, it takes time,
Yeah.
and something I don't have a ton of like back stock like ready to go just
Hmm.
for like storage purposes and also just having time to in between shows to like restock and everything too. But like I see all of the stuff for the spring and the summer, shows are coming out, all of the applications, and I'm like, oh, I really like this show, like I want to do that. But then if I am not careful, then all of a sudden I'm booked 6 or 8
Hmm.
weekends in a row and I really can't do that. Yeah, my husband's very good about like, oh, are you sure you can do that? And like if I start talking about all these additional ones, like remember the last time, he's like, and you
Hmm.
did not like that. I have to limit myself so that I'm
Hmm.
not running all over the place kind of crazy.
It takes a long time to make everything that we make.
Mm-hmm.
So I never know, do I take a lot of my inventory and put it on my online shop? Do I have separate inventory? How do you do that? Do you have
Mm.
separate inventory than what you bring to a craft show?
I do not, because I have the website through the Square,
Hmm.
it links my inventory. So like if I sell something at a craft show, it takes it off of the website. So like it is all linked. So I guess that's another benefit to having the website through Square is that it is all linked together like that.
I had my Square linked to my Etsy store for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really nice because it would just take that item off of Etsy and make it unavailable. I thought it would only do it for items that are on your Etsy site. So things that I didn't have listed on my Etsy site, Etsy was charging a 20-cent fee every time just because my Etsy was linked to my Square, no matter if the product was on Etsy or was not on Etsy. Because I had my shop on vacation mode and I had hardly anything on there. And I did a really big craft show. It was like, oh, Etsy charged you all this money for fees. And I was like, what are the fees for? I didn't take anything off of my Etsy store through this craft show. But it didn't matter. It was in the fine print that every time you run your Square, when it's connected to your Etsy store, it will charge you that fee. I get they have to make their money too, but
that is kind of silly. Like if it's something that's not even listed on your Etsy shop.
I had no idea it was going to do that. And like I said, I was pretty upset when I got home that I had this fee for things that, one, my shop was on vacation, and two, the items weren't even listed. So what the heck? All right, we are almost at the end of our show. Do you have your random fun fact for me?
I do. So I'm going to ask you a question. It's a trivia question.
Ooh, okay.
So when were the first like bed pillows, sleeping pillows used?
Oh my gosh. I'm going to say 1702. I don't know. Is that right?
So that's what, about 200-ish years ago? It's going to be shocking. It's actually 9,000 years ago.
Wow.
So yeah, so they say, the historians and whatnot say that around 7,000 BC in Mesopotamia is when the first pillows were used. Now they were made out of stone, so they're not the pillows that we think of today at all, but some type of headrest for sleeping was first used at that time.
Wow, that is so cool.
Right?
I love it. Well, thank you so much for spending your afternoon with me. I love chatting with you, and I hope we're next to each other at a craft show soon. I'm sure we will be.
I've had so much fun. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. Come on and chat again, please.
Oh, definitely.
Have a good day.
Right. You too. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the Handmade with Heart podcast. You can find Sam at Keystreet Creations, and you can find me at Scrappy Stitch, and also the Handmade with Heart podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. See you next time.